There are people who have a hard time getting up from a chair, from a sofa, right? So again, the concept of heavy is very relative. If you explain, instead of saying we're going to lift weights, I like to say I'm going to strengthen your muscles, because it doesn't involve the words heavy or anything like this. So there are two things that make the concept understandable, in my opinion. One is improving the ability to move, moving better. The other is strengthening muscles. Actually, I would use strengthening the movement patterns other than muscles, because muscles brings me to the bodybuilding idea, which is something that I've been a bodybuilder, but it's something I don't like to sell or to do, because strengthening your bicep does not make you a strong person. You may have all your single muscles strong, but if you're not able to coordinate them into a movement, you're not strong at all. So I would say, improving movement capacity, movement ability, movement skills, and improving strength within the basic movement patterns. This is what I would say. But if you tell people, you talk about, you mention movement patterns, they have a hard time understanding. If you tell them, bring force or strengthen your muscles, they would understand this idea, right? So the idea is, how do you start in your 30s, 50s? You want to move easier, move better, move pain-free, and feel everything, every effort, every daily effort, you want that to feel easier. This is what we're looking for, And I do see people at my age. It's interesting. I don't know you guys, because you're also, you're in your 40s, and you'll see that even more in your 50s. But do you oftentimes sometimes go to some of those dinners with your old schoolmates or something like that? Ever happened?
Yeah,
I do that on a regular basis. I still have a chat with my schoolmates of secondary school. So we were at school together in our teens, right? And I go to the dinners, and I feel like, oh my God, there's my grandfather, my grandfather there, my grandmother, Aunt Jane, and it's because they haven't been moving for a while, and for them, things that are incredibly easy for me are really hard, right? So of course, I cannot sell them the idea of lifting a bar, But do they need to lift the bar? How do you get stronger at the beginning? You don't need much.
But this is one of the things as well, isn't it? When this is what I was thinking when we were talking about this, about training as you get older. It means something different to everybody, because some people think they're old in their 40s, and you're not, are you? Let's face it, you're not. You get at this day and age, if you're in your 40s, you're going to live the same again, pretty much.
You may be old in your 40s. You may be old in your 20s. I see people 25 years old who, in my opinion, they are old because they can't move. Yeah. And I think now, James, this is the best time for you to bring up that book. Because it's just.
Just to explain, we were talking just before coming on air, and it was about a question which we'll go on to in a second probably, but the quote was, you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing, or you don't stop training because you get old because you stop training. And it was a question from Les, who asked me the other day, and he said he plays cricket, a team sport, and he's 63 years old now. And he said, kind of, how do you know when to stop competing? And we kind of had a discussion. I wanted to have this discussion with Pete and with Fabio as well. There's a difference between team sports. There's solo sports. There's obviously age group categories for many sports now. But Les had said, I think doesn't feel he's playing cricket particularly well at the moment, and he's never been one who just is there to make up the numbers. But one thing that he said that really kind of stuck with me was, he said, well, if you decide you're going to stop or retire from playing a sport, you're a long time retired. And he basically was saying that, if he decides to stop now, he's not going to play again, and until he dies, so it's kind of, it's looking at that kind of if you say you're going to give stop, that's it for life. So it's quite a hard decision, I think, for him. And there's not really a right and a wrong answer to this, I know, because there's so many things, so many possibilities, and people do sports for all different kinds of reasons, not just for performance. It could be for community, for friendship, for exercise, for health, all those things. It doesn't necessarily need to be to compete at a high standard. But I suppose if you're used to competing at a high-ish standard and you notice your performance dropping, I can see where that kind of question comes from. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of get your views on things.
Well, first let's start with that quote, which is part of the answer. I mean, you didn't become old because you didn't stop playing because you became old, but you became old because you stopped playing. And this happens everywhere. And one of the saddest things I ever seen, people have been working really hard their entire life and say, okay, now I retire, I'm going to take it easy, I'm going to rest. And then they die 1 year later. How many times we heard this? I mean, you have no reason to live anymore, right? And those who instead keep themselves active, kind of live for decades after and have a great life and so on. So I do think that we need reasons to stay young, reasons to live, and challenges that keep us alive. If you just let yourself go, you'll just die. That's one point. Atrophy, it's a term that applies to everything, also to your own life. Just get tired of life and nothing. So what time you stop playing? It's interesting because, as you said, there are some sports in which you may compete until you're really old, because they're age group categories. So you're not a 70-year-old person competing against 25s, but you're competing in your category. Pavel's father, Vladimir, he's been competing in powerlifting until his very late 70s. I'm not sure, but probably he did a competition in his 80s. But of course, he was competing with people same age, right? So this makes it easier. Team sports are different because there's another factor. If you don't have an age category, unless you just change team and you form your own non-professional team made with your friends, at one point the team will say, you should just walk away because you're not performing anymore. So I do understand that. And by the way, I did try to watch cricket many times when I was a kid and I was in the UK. I never understood it. But
hey, that brings me on to something that this fits really well, actually, and it's about cricket. So there's Freddy Flintoff, who was an England cricketer. I know nothing about cricket either, but there's a program on at the minute. There's a series on TV. So he's from a working class background. I think he grew up in Preston in the UK. So he's from a working class background, and I think 80% of cricketers, professional cricketers, are from private schools and what have you. So from from wealthier backgrounds, shall we say? Okay. Yeah. And he's not, and he ended up playing for England. So he's saying it can be done. So he's gone back to his hometown, and he's trying to he's talking to the kids, like 15, 16-year-old kids, and trying to get them interested in cricket. They don't know anything about it. They're not interested. They don't even know who he is. So the first episode was on last night. He puts a team together. They're training together for like 6 or 7 weeks. It's going to go on for a few more months, but he set up a game, and they played a team who've played together for years, and the average age of these guys was 65. Okay. And they're playing a bunch of kids whose average age is 17 or something like that. The 65-year-olds thrashed them. They won, right? The kids didn't get one person out. They played a certain amount of overs, and then they were all out for I think the 65-year-olds got 60 runs, and the kids were all out for 40 runs or something. So there's the thing about age. If the kids had been playing longer, they would have won, right? Or you'd expect them to. But the bunch of 65-year-olds won because they've got more experience. They play together each week. So there's a one for Les. He's 63. He's slowed down. These 65-year-olds are going to slow down from where they were. None of them look like athletes. Let's face it. But they're still One, because they had more experience. So the experience is there, and they were saying there's a lot more to it than just the sport, because it's the community, it's the people, it's the friendships and all that. So you could see they were using it as something they enjoyed, but it was just they all went for tea afterwards, because cricket involves eating scones and all that afterwards, doesn't it? But so there's a one for Les straight away. Yeah, what do you do if you give up?